Hello everyone, welcome back to Crypto Cash. Thank you for joining me here today. This is your one-stop shop for cryptocurrency analysis, among other things. And what we're going to do here today is take a closer look at Matic. Now, I've been keeping a closer eye on this one, of course, because my Patreon contributors have been actually requesting that I look at this more regularly, because even though we're in kind of a strange time right now with Bitcoin, there's still a lot of opportunity with Matic. It's a really, really good currency, and I think that if you aren't already familiar with it, get on board because I think it's a way of the future, of course. Regardless, this is not a fundamental analysis. We're really just looking at the technicals, so we're only going to look at the charts to help you find good entry point and best practice. Now, I'm not a financial advisor. This is for educational purposes only. Always do your own research. I have years of trading experience, and my goal is to help you, trade for a lifetime, right? So teach you how to fish instead of fishing for you. All right. So that being said, before we go further, go ahead and reference the links below, of course. I do have a link to my Patreon account if you'd like to show your support, $25 in Bitcoin from Voyager, as well as a link to my Telegram community and my Patreon account where we have a private Discord channel. So feel free to reference that on your own time. But for right now, without further ado, let's go ahead and just check it out. All right, folks, let's go ahead and take a look at Matic. And what we're doing first is we always take a look at Bitcoin and Ethereum, just kind of get a baseline of the market, see what's going on overall, just so we understand moving into investing in any altcoin, what the two highest coin market caps are doing, right? Bitcoin being the first, Ethereum being the second, of course. So let's take a look at that, and let's go ahead and look at Bitcoin. Before we do, just need to preface, this is a Binance desktop application. I get that question a lot. And of course, we are using TradingView within. So you just enable it by clicking on the top right-hand corner here. So if you'd like to follow along and add the indicators, you're more than welcome to. I use the 50 and the 200-day simple moving average. These are the moving averages here. And of course, VWAP and EMA 15. I'll get into that a little bit later. So on the 4-hour chart here for Bitcoin, first of all, we've got the 50-day moving average. This is this yellow line here. And we did lose that as a support recently. And it does look like we are forming a head and shoulders pattern. So we could expect this to come down a little bit lower before it recovers. That is still likely to be seen. We don't know where we're heading just yet, but there is potential for that to occur. Just saying, patterns occur, but they don't have to, right? So bottom line, there's no significance in that, but it is a potential. Furthermore, we have a major support level down here at about 30,000. And of course, the current resistance is 42,000 for Bitcoin. And the moving average is trending its way down, of course, right around 49,000 and some change. That is the 200-day moving average, which is essentially one of the more pivotal moving averages for Bitcoin, right? So it is one of the most essential ones you want to pay attention to. So we can get the price above that, we'll be in pretty good shape if it were to hold for a couple of days. Moving on to Ethereum, looking at Ethereum, here's kind of what we're at now. First of all, there is a support level that I haven't marked yet, but it's roughly at about 1890, so we'll just say 1900. And of course, we've got a resistance level right at about 29? Let's go ahead and round up as well and say 29 for that, because that was tested multiple times. And it will hopefully be tested again soon and break above. Okay. So that's kind of what we're looking at. Similar channel to Bitcoin, of course, but Ethereum is doing slightly better than Bitcoin, which it normally does. It hasn't been doing so in the past. The last 2 weeks, it seems like it's been kind of dying off, but it does seem to be regaining popularity and ramping up a little quicker than Bitcoin. So this is a good sign for Ethereum. Matic, we're looking at the one-day chart first. Now, first of all, what we want to look at here, of course, is just to identify the moving averages. 50-day moving averages working as a strong support. So hopefully the price, continues to go up, of course, but we want to see the moving average eventually work as a support to drive the price up even further. That may or may not happen, of course, but generally speaking, that's the concept of how moving averages work. Looking at the volume, we see, the volume is tapering off, of course, which happens when there's a sell-off. No surprise of the retracement based on the overall market with Bitcoin and how things have been performing. But Matic is still pretty good about moving independently from Bitcoin. So we can expect to see some type of price increase here in the near future, because obviously you see this push down here. When we have a long wick below the candlestick like that, that does signify that there's potential for a pullback. Okay. All the other indicators aren't really telling us too much at this point. RSI is slightly high, but no big deal. What's nice is it is tentatively working as a support. because what's nice about the RSI is that the 55 or higher, if it stays above that, it can work as it's basically an invisible support. So we are at that point right now. The price has been trending above. And then when it moves down below 45, just say, for example, that's when it can be considered more of a resistance. Now, that's not, again, super important on the one-day chart, just based on the price action, the way that it's been extremely volatile. It's hard to really use this as a valuable indicator, but that's the general concept. We can maybe look at that on the 4-hour chart and see if it's any similar. So just go ahead and take a look here at the moving averages. First of all, the support level of the 50-day moving average is consistent. So it was working as a pretty strong support here, as well as last 8 hours. So we're looking pretty good here in the sense there, whereas the moving average says that the price should be $1.70, and that is essentially where it stopped and continued upwards. So that allowed the bulls to regain control. 200-day moving average, potential support, but it's too early to tell. We'll see eventually when that were to happen. I wouldn't say we're going to see that in the near future, just based on the fact that the average range for Matic should be in the 170 to 240 range, which is roughly what we're seeing here in this channel. Down below, RSI is in the middle, no big deal there. MACD is moving down. That is pretty standard for the recent sell-off. And again, that's because the price came up pretty quick, and then indecision with Bitcoin, the head and shoulders pattern, the fact that it's kind of coming back down is exactly why we saw this retracement and the price bounce off the 50-day moving average. All right, so let's look at the 15-minute chart next. Now, I always disable my simple moving averages just because they're less impactful on the shorter time frames. And then, of course, the VWAP, I like to enable that. That is the volume weighted average price. If you're new to the channel, the VWAP essentially just tells us that the average price of the last 24 hours, basically it's the volume of the last 24 hours, rather, expressed as a price. So in other words, the price, according to the volume, the last 24 hours should be $1.92. Now what's nice is it works as a support and resistance level. So if you see here, it was a support when our prices were good, and then it came back down, and it's under now, right? So that basically means it's a resistance level. So what's nice about it is that you don't have to always mark your support and resistance levels if you're using the VWAP on a shorter time frame, because it really helps you understand generally, where the price action is supposed to be, all right? And because if it gets too far away from either side, then it corrects itself. So if you see this difference here, this $1.66 from the $1.92, this range, this variance, what is that? That's roughly, that's down 13%. That was too far away from the volume weighted average price, and the price had to come back up. Now, granted, it bounced off the 50-day moving average as well, but that being said, that's essentially how the VWAP is helpful. If the price is too far from the original point, that standard deviation gets too great, then it has to come back down or back up, depending on which side it's on. Now let's go ahead and look at the EMA. EMA is the exponential moving average, also a valuable indicator on a shorter time frame here. And the reason why it's beneficial is because it works as a momentum indicator. It's telling us basically the momentum here is bearish, right? Now it's likely bullish now because the price bounced up over VWAP and is holding so far, but also furthermore, it's up over EMA. This happens with any kind of pullback. However, we want to wait for confirmation. So before taking entry, highly recommend waiting for the price to come down and bounce off the VWAP and or EMA line to see if it's confirming its direction is still bullish. Okay. So that's kind of something just to note there. Let's look at some of the other indicators here. As you can see, the RSI was extremely low. That's why we kept seeing these corrections and the price come back up. So that is a good sign there that we shouldn't expect the price to come much lower than where it's at right now, because again, it bounced off the 50-day moving average on the 4-hour chart at roughly $1.60, what is it, $1.65, and the price is currently right at about $1.95. Moving on to the 1-minute chart, let's just go ahead and just talk about this here, because it's very similar in a lot of ways to the 15 as far as the concept of using the EMA and the VWAP. Only difference is, the price action is much more severe. You see a lot more reaction. So a lot of times the 1-minute chart can be good to kind of identify the smaller stuff, but bear in mind that the EMA line, it works a little bit, I guess you could say a little more sporadic. There can be some missed signals in there, so just be cautious of that. But the bottom line here is that if you look, you see the price coming down. It was under EMA, came up over EMA, and kept bouncing. Every time it bounces off the EMA and comes back up, you know that's a bullish trend. So it's a good time to kind of get in, if you will, because the trend is your friend, right? It's probably your only friend in this market. So it's important to understand when that happens. Now, that being said, looking at the price here where we're at, I don't see a good entry point just yet, but we want to wait for the price to, again, come down, bounce off the VWAP line, and return back up. So, my recommendation here is to wait for the price to validate and to confirm it is holding above VWAP. After it's confirmed and it bounces off VWAP, then we can see if it stays above the EMA line, and at that point maybe consider entry. Now let me give you a better example here. As you can see, here's how the VWAP works, right? See the price coming up, bouncing off EMA, great. It's coming up, it stops. It's like, okay, nope. The average volume is $1.90, so it has to reject. So it works as a resistance level. Resist, 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 and eventually broke through really hard. Now you see it comes up, comes back down, and bounces, and it holds as a support. So this is a very strong VWAP line at this point. So in other words, we should expect the price to either bounce off this or just continue to stay above. I wouldn't anticipate the price coming much lower than $1.90. So I would say that this would probably be a good consideration for an entry point, but you always want to wait for confirmation, and confirmation for me is like no less than 2 to 3 solid green bars above the EMA line and the VWAP. So if you see here, obviously we got the VWAP line here. If it comes down and bounces, that's check number 1. That's the first thing you want to pay attention to. But once the price breaks above the EMA line, you want to wait for, just say 2 to 3 solid green bars. Now, what I mean by that is just this right here. So this is an example of like 3 or 4 solid green bars that are closing above the EMA line, right? So when you see something like that, that kind of gives you confirmation. Now, again, this was near its top. We want to be wary of that. And then also pay attention to the RSI. RSI should be like the tertiary, the very last thing that you look at to take entry or exit, because it just kind of helps validate things, right? So this right here, the price was closer to 70, so it wouldn't have been a terrible entry, but you didn't have that full confirmation because the price keeps going above and below the EMA line. When it's dipping below the EMA line and jumping above the EMA and not getting that full confirmation, then that is something to be cautious about, right? In other words, when you see a bullish trend right here, this is how you identify a bullish trend. You see the price comes up, and it comes down, bounces off EMA, bounces off EMA. In this case, it could have continued if it wasn't for the VWAP, and it eventually did. Okay. So again, a bullish trend will always continue to bounce off the EMA line and continue upwards. So that's why I say it's difficult sometimes to take entry in a scenario like this when there's consolidation, because you never truly know when the bottom is. That's why you want to use the VWAP to ensure that you find the bottom and you confirm that that is the current bottom of the price action for the market conditions presently. Okay. Because again, the VWAP is consistently evolving, right? It's always going to take the most recent 24 hours. So as of the last 24 hours, that's why this is, the price action. So that's why another reason why you can't use the VWAP line on a chart that's larger than 15 minutes, because it's the time frame is too large and it doesn't work very effectively. Okay? So just be careful. My goal here would be to wait for VWAP to be tested, price to bounce above the EMA line, get at least 2 to 3 minutes of confirmation above the EMA line, and consider taking entry. I would take a small entry, nothing large. Anything over 30% would be potentially hazardous, just based on the fact that we don't have confirmation yet. We want to wait for Bitcoin to kind of stabilize a little bit more and perhaps continue upwards before we want to take and add to our position. And that's what I would do. I'm more of a conservative trader. I like to go with more certainties instead of just jumping in and hoping for the best. All right, so I recommend you do the same as well. Try to have good risk tolerance, good risk management. I'll have some training videos regarding that soon, so you understand what I mean by that. But you should never risk more than 1% if your goal is to gain 2%. It should always be at least a 2-to-1 ratio. Forget those other people who are telling you should go 10x, 20x, 30x, right? That's fantastic. That's great if you do that. If you want to hold on for dear life and go through that, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Just note that you could very well lose all that money, right? I would much rather put my money into something and get out and essentially know that I'm going to take a profit in that 24-hour period, or perhaps just say a 72-hour period, instead of hoping for the best and writing it out until all this craziness dies off or ramps up to get crazy. Either way, I think you understand what I'm trying to get at, and I apologize for rambling, but hopefully you found this beneficial. If you do, please like and subscribe. Feel free to support me on Patreon. We have a really awesome private Discord channel there, as well as the fact that I have a Telegram community, as well as a free Discord channel as well. So please feel free to reference that down below. If you'd like $25 in Bitcoin from Voyager, there's that information too. So again, thank you so much for your time. We'll see you in the next video. Have a great rest of your day.